2005, we had made tremendous progress by making an act of parliament that said we were going to reform the Nigerian electricity power sector. The only problem was that it seemed as if this act was made and put on the shelf. And by 2007, it was even suspended, that is, the reform was even suspended. We had set up a regulatory commission, as would be in any country that's going to have private sector participation. But this commission was suspended, and we needed to see that we reinstate this commission. The company that was Nigeria Electric Power Authority at the time was an authority. If you wanted to build a power plant, what they would say is, you generate electricity, supply to us. You couldn't domicile your power locally, so you have no connection to the consumer. The entire thing was generate, give to a national grid, and then they distribute. Totally inefficient. And in some places where they were doing okay, some company was generating electricity and giving to the population directly. Things were making there was some progress in getting electricity reliably. The authority said they had to have control. So being able to unbundle this authority was important, and that's how the 11 distribution companies came about, and the 6 generation companies, and the transmission company of Nigeria. So there are a number of things that needed to be done in this to move the sector forward, and I will talk about them. So one of the key things that we wanted to achieve was to privatize the entire, privatize some elements of the value chain in production. You have the fuel, you have power generation, you have transmission, you have distribution of electricity. We wanted to take the generation of electricity and distribution of electricity into private sector, for private sector hands. And the transmission, because of access to wheeling of power, to remain with government. And that was the whole essence of privatizing the system. So this privatization would involve taking all the generations plants owned by government and handing over to the private sector. And same thing with distribution. The only problem was, when you look at the entire value chain, the fueling part of it, something had to be done, which is the international oil companies and the Nigerian National Petroleum were responsible for production of gas. And Nigeria, I'm sure that when Dr. Ige speaks, he will talk about that overwhelmingly a lot of the power plants that are going to be built in the future in Nigeria would be natural gas fueled. As a result, having efficient production of this commodity became so important. But you cannot have this unless the value chain is aligned, which means that tariffing and all the issues about this would be aligned with power and distribution. So there are several reasons. First, of course, is for the privatization. We cannot have a situation where the government is the sole provider of power and is not able to provide. So the generation of this 4,000, we felt that if the power plants were sold, then the capacity of the power plants could actually be recovered. Some of the power plants, say 1,000 megawatt power plant, was producing at about 200 megawatts. And the reason is lack of maintenance. The government was not able to provide resources to maintain, and technical capacity of the plant operators not there. So private sector management became essential. Attracting investment from outside and from within became also quite important in this. In terms of distribution, the distribution companies were not creditworthy entities, so they could not really take power directly from producers of power, simply because they are not able to guarantee the payment for the power that they take. So as a result, it became important that they be privatized, and within a short period, anticipation that they would be able to, they would be in a position to become creditworthy and begin to buy power on bilateral agreement basis. So the privatization became so critical as a result of this. This is what the outcome of the entire privatization would look like. So that upon privatization, you would have the gas being produced by a private sector, but largely private sector, operation largely private sector, but it could be owned by the government and the private sector and the oil companies. Transmission of gas, currently that is mostly federal government, would become largely private sector, and production of power would be mostly private sector, except for the hydropower that is concession but still managed by private sector. Transmission would be owned by the federal government but private sector managed, and distribution would be wholly private sector. That's the expectation. And as you've seen from the presentation by Bart Nnaji, that by December, the privatization had moved towards completion. They still haven't finished paying, but basically we believe that we're at a point of no return with that. What that does is tremendous. It's not that immediately we'll begin to see increase in power, but it means that investors can now come to invest in generation. Investors who are investing in distribution will quickly get the distribution to credit worthiness, so that they will be able to do bilateral agreements between the generators and the distributors of electricity. Now, I said I would talk about tariff. If you look at where Nigeria was in tariff prior to last year, you will see that other than Zambia, we were the lowest paying for our electricity per kilowatt hour. And there's no way a private sector would want to invest in this kind of situation, when even countries that don't have as much capacity in terms of income were doing much better than Nigeria. And so by June 1 last year, we put in place cost-reflective tariff, very, very critical for the industry. And we're pleased to say that it has totally incentivized the entire value chain. But of course, this is not going to be of, we can't say that we've done it unless the gas production part of it was also tied to it. And so it was important that the tariff for gas also got increased to the point where it is cost reflective. I'll talk a little about that. People argued whether Nigerian public will pay. And the fact is, if we look at what it costs, if we say that the total installed capacity of Nigeria power is 6,500 megawatts, that's actually installed, not generating capacity. and what it costs to do self-generation. And we're saying that it is about 45 naira per kilowatt hour. 45 naira is what? It's about, that's 45 naira. 30 cents. It's about 30 cents, which is so high in terms of the cost of electricity in most countries. But what we feel is cost-reflective tariff is 22 naira, which is maybe about 14, 15 cents. Now, our expectation is that if we do the arithmetic simply, that it costs by far a lot more to the nation to do self-generation than to increase the tariff, get it cost-reflective, and then have investors come in and be able to invest in it. And that's what this says. So it was therefore important to have a new tariff regime which would bring investors. This is what what it costs to what the average poor person pays just for using candles and firewood. It's more than what we're asking that the cost of electricity become. Manufacturers pay in excess of 40 cents per kilowatt hour, and everyone else pays in between 30 cents and 45 cents. So this is very expensive, but if we have a tariff which attracts investment, then this would make a lot of sense. Now, where are we? What has been done? So as I said, in 2010, the roadmap was created. A lot of things have been done. The Regulatory Commission was reinstated, and to be stronger. Institutions that make it possible for electricity industry to work on the long run were created. One of them is the bulk trader. The bulk trader is an entity that is supposed to purchase power from producers of power on an interim basis when the off-taker, which is the distribution company, is not creditworthy yet. And so this entity is a government entity that's supposed to provide credit guarantee. And this guarantee, in our case, instead of providing sovereign guarantee for power, we're using World Bank partial risk guarantee to do this. So that's what the bulk trader does. The entire debt of the power holding company of Nigeria, which is the government entity, needed to be moved to a government-owned debt-owning entity, which is Nigeria Electricity Liability Management Company, so that if we're selling the power asset is free of debt. The power asset should be free of debt, should also be free of workers, so that the buyer is now responsible, is now free to get new workers, and also it's not carrying debt. Training institute and a whole number of other institutions were set up. So I would say that according to the government program, that the labor union issue is being resolved. A management contractor is in place for the transmission company of Nigeria, and the power holding company is being wound down, and the partial risk guarantee is being provided by government. Other things that are in place, we have been able to attract entities like the United States Exim to partner with the government and actually the private sector in providing credit to investors. Up to $1.5 billion of this was done. And the General Electric company wants to come to invest in Nigeria for up to 10,000 megawatts by partnering with private sector. And Siemens, same thing. A number of companies have now begun to come in. And each one coming in wants to invest equity, not just to sell us equipment, as used to be, but really to invest equity in the country. Now, I'll just talk briefly about the transmission. This is, it may look like, because government is responsible, that it's not an opportunity for private sector, but actually it is, because Nigeria has to move to a point where some segment of the transmission network can be built and the cost of building be recovered by private sector. So up until a year ago, this was what the network looked like in Nigeria. And there are some projects being executed in Nigeria that will bring it to this. What you saw was a radial network. You needed to have closed loop network in the transmission system, but you need to actually have a more robust system. What we want is you need to have closed loops connected to form a larger network. A supergrid was also conceived. This supergrid would span the nation in this way, and then also connect to the lower tension networks, so that ultimately you have a network looking like this. This also is an area of potential investment for private sector. So if you look at the whole thing, the entire value chain, here is from gas production to consumption, and this is where the bulk trader plays. And this is where it's important to incentivize the entire value chain so that we're able to reach this. And this is what the entire program of reform intended to achieve: value chain alignment, value chain incentivization. So pillars of reform, just a summary of that. An act of parliament was made and to reform the sector. And by 2010, we had to accelerate making this to realization. During the period, it was important to have short-term improvement in power by the government investing in power. The regulator had to be reinstated. Creditworthiness of the off-taker was made to work by having the establishment of the bulk trader. And then institutions were built, and then cost-reflective tariff and privatization. Let me just talk for a moment about a model that we in our company, because before I went into government, I was chairman and CEO of Geometric Power. Now that I'm out, I've gone back to the company. We wanted to create a model of power generation and distribution, like a utility, but smaller utility, not spanning the entire nation, not necessarily taking power from the national grid, but having embedded generation and taking the local grid, and improving that local grid. That was the intention. That's the Aba Integrated Power Project, what it was intended to be. It's in southeast part of Nigeria, the city where we're doing this experiment. And it came about because in 2004, the president of the World Bank and the minister of finance at the time went to this city to talk to small and medium scale industries. And they were asked, what's your number one problem? What would you get and you have quick growth? And they said electricity. If you give us electricity, we would be able to run multiple shifts. Currently, we run one shift. We could run 3 shifts. We will be able to produce seamless products. We will be able to have, we'll be able to run bigger machines Right now, we can't run machines because we use small generators, etc. So these are sort of the things talked about. So that's how the Aba Integrated Project motivated. And we wanted to have a ring fence of the place, and the government concessioned that place to our company. But another issue, when you build a power plant, normally you get sovereign guarantee. Or you get some form of guarantee. Either you get it from the off-taker or you get from government. Now, we are building a power plant. We wanted to build a power project there to supply directly to the consumers. And so the agreement with government was, okay, we concession the area, but you will not get government sovereign guarantee. You collect directly from the consumers. So it's a different model. And that's what this is about. So this is the model for power delivery in a ring-fenced area. I contend that this model could be done in many parts of Nigeria, and in fact, many parts of Africa. You look at areas that you want to stimulate economic growth quick because of maybe it's an agricultural area, maybe it is an industrial area, commercial area. In this case, a commercial city of Aba. And so we have a distribution company, Aba Power Limited, taking power from a generation company, the Geometric Power Aba Limited. You have investors. Our holding company, Geometric Power, is a developer and investor. And then you have lenders and other equity investors. The power generated by the Geometric Power Aba Limited is sold to three entities. One is the industries. They take power actually on bilateral agreement basis, power purchase agreement. Then the second group is the commercial and residential consumers. They sign standard connection agreements, and they are regulated. Then the third group, the third is the national grid. Excess power is sent to the national grid. And so this is the structure. We're getting gas from Shell. So that's how this is. It's thought of as a very investable structure. And we were able to get investments when the country was not even doing the reform. And so because you have the investors could see where the money is going to come from in this structure. So that's the structure. So we have Aba, which is a city of about 2 million people with about 200,000 connected consumers. And we have built an embedded power plant, 141 megawatts, built substations, power lines, all to improve the area. And we are now doing an additional 173 megawatts. And in the same city, we are building a new 500 megawatts with General Electric company. But really, Aba needs about 150 megawatts for now. But because of this, we anticipate that it's going to grow very quickly. That's what any city that has this sort of opportunity would do. So the point is that in Nigeria, in many of the industrial cities, this could be replicated as a way to go. Next month, we will commission this power project. And so Aba becomes the very first city in Nigeria to have absolute reliable electricity 24/7 as a result of the model.